Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Jaya Girivaradari Gopi Janna Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Gopi Janna Vallabha Jaya Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Jaya Raja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Jaya Raja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Jaya Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Damodar Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Jayam Vishnupada Paramhamsa Brihvajakacharya Astottara Satta Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupada Paramhamsa Brihvajakacharya Astottara Satta Shri Srimad. His Divine Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Thakur Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Namo Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Devamrita Swaminita Namane Prachai Purvaraksham Cha Bhaktatar Bhavinata Parartha Tapikarani Mr. Savage Tinama Namo Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminita Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Tarine Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, Chapter 7, What Prahlad Learned in the Womb, text number 38. Koti prayasa surabhalaka. Koti prayasa surabhalaka hare. There we go. Upasane sve hridi chidravat sataha. Svasyatmana sakyur ashesha dehinam. Samanyata kim vishaya papadana. Koti prayaso surabhalaka harer. Upasane sve hridi chidravat sataha. Svasyatmana sakyurashesha dehinam samanyata kim vishayo papadanai koti prayaso surabalaka harer upasane sre hridi chidravat sata svasyatmana sakyurashesha dehinam samanyata kim vishayo papadanai. Any devotees want to chant the shloka?
Koti prayaso surabhalaka hare upasane sve hridi chitravat sataha swayatmana sakur ashesha dehinam samanyata kim shayo papa danai.
Koti prayaso surabhalaka harer upasane swe hridhi chidravatsataha swasyatmana sakyur ashesha dehinam samanyata kim vishayo papadanahi.
Thank you, Prabhus. Word for word translation says, Kaha, what? Ati prayasaha, difficult endeavor. Asura balakaha, O sons of demons. Hare, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Upasane, in discharging the devotional service. Sve, in one's own. Hridi, core of the heart. Chidravat, just like the space. Sataha, who always exists. Svasya, of oneself or of the living entity. Atmanaha, of the supersoul. Sakyuhu, of the well-wishing friend. Ashesha, unlimited. Dehinam, of the embodied souls. Samanyataha, generally. Kim, what is the need? Visha upapadanahai, with activities delivering the objects of the senses for sense enjoyment. Vishaya upapadanahai, with activities delivering the objects of the senses for sense enjoyment. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Oops. Oops. Oh well. O my friends, sons of the Asuras, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his supersoul feature always exists within the cores of the hearts of all living entities. Indeed, he is the well-wisher and friend of all living entities, and there is no difficulty in worshiping the Lord. Why then should people not engage in his devotional service? Why are they so addicted to unnecessarily producing artificial paraphernalia for sense gratification? Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. At least I think the translation is done by Srila Prabhupada. I know there are only a few verses translated by other devotees, but that was in the fifth canto. Anyway, so this purport, of course, composed by Srila Prabhupada, he says, because the personality of Godhead is supreme, no one is equal to him, no one is greater than him. Nonetheless, if one is a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord is easily obtainable. The Lord is compared to the sky because the sky is vast, yet within the reach of all. Got it. Not only of human beings, but even of the animals. The Supreme Lord in his Paramatma feature exists as the well-wisher and friend. As confirmed in the Vedas, Sayujao, Sakayao, the Lord in his super soul feature always stays in the heart along with the living entity. It's interesting. Sayujao and Sakayao has the suffix ao, which makes it the dual form. Not many languages have a dual form. Generally, there's a singular and a plural. But some languages, especially Sanskrit, has a dual form. So Sayujao, those two are friends, Sakayao, the living entity and the Lord in his supersoul feature. Those two are friends. The Lord in his supersoul feature always stays in the heart along with the living entity. The Lord is so friendly to the living entity that he remains within the heart so that we can always contact him without difficulty. One can do this simply by devotional service. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam. As soon as one hears of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna Kirtan, one immediately comes in touch with the Lord. A devotee immediately comes in touch with the Lord by any or all of the items of devotional service. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Bandhanam Dasyam Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. Therefore, there is no difficulty in coming in contact with the Supreme Lord. Ko ati prayasa. Ka. Ka ati prayasa. Like, what is the difficulty? We like to attribute this famous slogan to our own Srila Prabhupada, but he's, being a bona fide acharya, is referencing the other acharyas, Srila Prahlad Maharaj, who says, Ka ati prayasa. What's the difficulty? What difficulty could there be? Therefore, there is no difficulty in coming in contact with the Supreme Lord, Koti Prayasa. On the other hand, going to hell requires great endeavor. If one wants to go to hell by illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication, he must acquire so many things. For illicit sex, he must arrange money for brothels. For meat eating, he must arrange for many slaughterhouses. For gambling, he must arrange for casinos and hotels, and for intoxication, he must open many breweries. These things don't just fall in your lap. You have to put in a lot of work for them. Clearly, therefore, if one wants to go to hell, he must endeavor very much. But if he wants to return home, back to Godhead, there is no difficult endeavor. To go back to Godhead, one may live alone anywhere, in any condition, and simply sit down, meditate upon the Supersoul, and chant and hear about the Lord. Thus, there is no difficulty in approaching the Lord. Atantagobir vishatam tamisram. Because of inability to control the senses, one must go through great endeavor to go to hell. But if one is sensible, can very easily obtain the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead because the Lord is always with him. By the simple method of Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, the Lord is satisfied. Indeed, the Lord says, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhakti Paritam Ashnami Prayatatmanaha. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. One can meditate upon the Lord anywhere and everywhere. Thus Prahlad Maharaj advised his friends, the sons of the demons, to take this path back home, back to Godhead, without difficulty. Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Paramami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So again, Prahlad Maharaj is saying, "Oh, my friends, son of the Asuras, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Super Soul feature always exists within the hearts." Let me start over. The Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Super Soul feature always exists within the cores of the hearts of all living entities. And he is the well-wisher and friend of all living entities. And there is no difficulty in worshiping the Lord. Why then should people not engage in his devotional service? Kim Vishayopapadana. Why? What is the need? Why are they so addicted to unnecessarily producing artificial paraphernalia for sense gratification? Dear devotees, if we find ourselves struggling with an addiction to sense gratification, we should know that we are not alone, that this is really the ultimate challenge. And we should have a little sympathy for ourselves, because this question that Prahlad Maharaj is asking, although rhetoric on his part, was asked by even Uddhava to Krishna himself. Why, oh, why are my senses so addicted to these objects? Why are they so locked in this unholy matrimony, this terrible bondage where my senses long for the objects, and it seems that the objects are so lodged into my senses, and it's very difficult to emancipate them from each other. It's very difficult to separate them. Despite being card-carrying Hare Krishnas, members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, despite walking the walk, talking the talk, dressing the dress, at least myself, dear devotees, are still addicted to sense objects, still very much about them. And so Prahlad Maharaj is baffled by this. Being a great devotee, a great soul, even he is surprised. Why then Should people not engage in the devotional service of the Lord? Why instead are they so addicted to unnecessarily producing artificial paraphernalia for sense gratification? Koti prayasa. What's the problem? He's saying. Let's try to understand. Even Prahlad Maharaj is surprised by this. So, we're going to have a little sympathy for us, that we're also surprised that that bondage persists. Or maybe, those of you tuning in today, you do not experience this difficulty. If that's the case, feel free to go and just hear Krishna's pastimes right now instead of listening to this. But if, like me, we still struggle with attachment to the sense objects, then we should recognize this is baffling. It is very difficult. The mind is producing artificial paraphernalia for sense gratification. We're addicted to it. Krishna illustrates our situation at the end of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where he says something, and it's really amazing. And what he says is, oh Lord Krishna, give me a second. He says that the mind is like a factory producing varieties of desire for sense gratification, right? And one must give it up. Where is that verse? You're going to like it. Just give me a second. In text number 55 of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is describing our situation here. Pratyadakaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmana tushta stita pragyas tadochate. Krishna is saying the system of someone who's become transcendental, really starting to get into the serious spiritual life, as they give up all varieties of desire for gratification that are born out of mental concoction. Sarvan partha manogatan. Our mind is like a factory producing low quality products. What are these low quality products? Different varieties of desire for sense gratification. Oh, I just had this, and if I had that, then I would be happy. But then, lo and behold, I got this, and I got that, and I'm not happy. So then our little factory of our mind turns on again. Well, what if we did this and that at the same time? Genius, it's brilliant. Or what if we did this and we did that, but in a different country? Then really the happiness would start to just flow like honey all the time. This factory of the mind just producing varieties of desires for sense gratification. Sarvan partha manogatan. Krishna is saying all sorts of concoctions being made. And it's time to give it up. Prahlad Maharaj is also expressing his surprise at this situation. Why are they so addicted to unnecessarily producing artificial paraphernalia for sense gratification? Why indeed? Let's not be so hard on ourselves, because even the great devotee Uddhava asked this to his dear friend, Lord Krishna himself. This is described in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is in chapter 13, I believe. Uddhava asked Krishna himself. This is part of the Uddhava Gita. How does this happen? How is it that the senses are so lodged into the sense objects? It's very natural that the senses are lodged in the objects are lodged in the senses. How is it they could ever become emancipated and separated? Krishna, recognizing the significance of the question, how baffled even Uddhava is. Prahlad is baffled. Uddhava is baffled. So if we find ourselves baffled, we're in good company. Krishna, in answering Uddhava's question, then refers to the four Kumaras, those great boy sages like Prahlad, who asked their own father the same question, saying, the four Kumaras said to their father, "Oh, our Lord, People's minds are naturally attracted to material sense objects, and similarly, the sense objects in the form of desire enter within the mind. Therefore, how can a person who desires liberation, who desires to cross over activities of sense gratification, destroy the mutual relationship between the sense objects and the mind? Please explain this to us. And do you know what Brahma did? Do you know what Brahma, the engineer of the universe, whose body is formed almost entirely of intelligence, you know what he said? He said, I don't know. Let's ask the Lord. So again, have a little sympathy for ourselves. This is a tricky question. And so Brahma immediately meditated upon Hamsa, the Hamsa avatar, who immediately appeared before them. And the four Kumaras standing behind Brahma, who is their father and guru, then inquired from the Lord himself this same question. Actually, first they asked, "Who are you?" And the Lord, being very analytical, had some joking and instructive words. But then he goes on to say, finally in his answer, about our critical situation. He goes on to say, I believe it's in text number 24 of the 13th chapter of the 11th canto. Starting from text number 24, Hamsavatar gives very great, very analytical knowledge, which I'd like all of us to listen attentively to and try to break it down as the Lord has broken it down for us. This question has been elevated in importance, right? Those of you who work in some corporate environment or maybe some government environment, you have to escalate a situation to higher and higher authorities. So this question has been escalated all the way to the top. The Hamsa avatar, speaking to the four Kumaras, says, within this world, whatever is perceived by the mind, speech, eyes, or other sense is me alone and nothing besides me. All of you, please understand this by a straightforward analysis of the facts. This is why we're so addicted to sense gratification, because the very objects themselves are ultimately the Lord, his separated, indirect energy, his binna prakriti. The Hamsavatar goes on to say, my dear sons, the mind has a natural proclivity to enter into the material sense objects. And similarly, the sense objects enter into the mind. But both this material mind and the sense objects are merely designations that cover the spirit soul, who is part and parcel of me. It's very natural for us to be attached to sense objects. That's the problem. That's why we find ourselves bewildered, like Prahlad is saying. Why? Kim Vishayo Papadanai. Why is this happening? Because it's very natural. It's very natural because the very energy that we're attracted to is none other than the Lord. It is Krishna, but it's like a shadow. It's like the shadow to the real substance. The shadow may have the form, the silhouette of the real substance, but it is not the real substance. It is natural for us to be attracted to the Lord. And therefore, in our perverse state, we are attracted to the sense objects of this world. The Hamsa Avatar is making clear all of this is merely a designation that covers the spirit soul. The only part that we have wrong is not that there is attraction of the senses to the objects, but that our designation is thinking, aham mameti, this is I and mine. I am these senses and the sense objects are mine. This designation is our critical flaw, our crucial error. The attraction to the objects, actually, it cannot be undone. Rather, the designation must change that no, my senses are meant for the pleasure of Krishna, the object of meditation. The object for all of the senses and the mind is Krishna. When that designation is changed, then that emancipation is finally accomplished. It's very simple, and yet still we're very baffled by it. Mahamsa Avatar goes on to, he continues, a person who has thus achieved me by understanding that he is not different from me realizes that the material mind is lodged within the sense objects because of constant sense gratification, and that the material objects are existing prominently within the material mind. Having understood my transcendental nature, he gives up both the material mind and its objects. The Lord says that there's 3 states of consciousness: waking, sleeping, and deep sleep. But beyond these, there is the 4th state, Turiya, which is consciousness of the Lord, Krishna consciousness. This is where it all comes down to. When Srila Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness, perhaps he's referencing text number 27 of the 13th chapter of the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, wherein the Lord says there is a 4th state of consciousness, Turiya. I'm sorry, text 28. That 4th state of consciousness is situated in me. I am the Lord's servant. Das. Uh-oh. Am I still here? Did I break it? Never mind. That is our critical error. And what must be undone is to become attached to being the servant of Krishna, changing the designation. My senses are meant for the pleasure of Krishna. That is the sense object to be meditated upon. So we find ourselves struggling, baffled even, by the persistent marriage between the senses and their objects. We should know that actually it is very natural. The Lord himself has used that term. It is natural. The error, the fault of ours, is that we think ourselves separate to Krishna. We think the objects separate from Krishna. Therefore, Hamsa Avatar is saying, knowing yourself to be not different from me. I am the part and parcel of the Lord's servant. Then this nagging, persistent attachment to the sense objects can be relieved, and one can meditate on the supreme object of the senses. Indeed, when I first met the devotees in New Zealand, this is the first thing that my spiritual master told me. Blew my mind. Complete tactical nuclear strike upon my mind. But went to some program. I'd been coming along to the center in New Zealand for a little while, mostly because there was these very pretty girls and they were all flirting with me all the time. A little bit duplicitous, but they did it for the right reasons. And then finally, I came to one evening program when His Holiness Devamrita Swami was finally visiting. And he lectured about something that was all over my head, didn't understand anything. But at the end of it, I raised my hand. I was in the back of the room with 50 or 60 devotees there. New Bhakta, probably still had long dreadlocks or something. And I raised my hand and I said, I asked the question. I said, how can I know God? How can I know God? I thought it was really clever, really smart. And Gurudev said to me, this is our first time ever communicating, actually, first time we ever spoke. And he said, how can you know any other person? And I said, I can see them, I can hear them, I can touch them. And he said, exactly. You know God in the same way, hearing, speaking, touching, tasting, smelling. He said, when your senses become purified, you can perceive God as everything. And he really blew my mind. He didn't quote the verse, but referencing, of course, the important verse by Rupa Goswami, who says, Sarvapadi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchate. That when upadi, all of one's misconceptions about the self, become purified, when we're liberated from sarva upadi vinirmuktam, thinking I'm a man or I'm a woman, I'm an American or I'm an Indian, I'm this sort of employee or that sort of employee, all of these upadi, all of these superficial designations, and they're finally all given up. Vinirmuktam, when we're liberated. Sarva upadi vinirmuktam, tat paratvena nirmalam. And when one's fixation on the Supreme is pure, with no other distraction. Tat paratvena nirmalam, hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchate. The senses the senses, being engaged in the service of the master of the senses, that's called bhakti. So the problem is not our senses, dear devotees. The problem is not even the sense objects. They cannot be blamed. You can't blame that attractive form, that new product, that situation, the weather. It's not the objects. It's not even the senses. The soul possesses senses. The problem is our designation, thinking ourselves separate from Krishna, thinking the senses and their objects to be separate from Krishna. And thus we find ourselves bewildered. But knowing the senses and the objects to be the same as Krishna, as the Hamsavatar is saying, knowing them to all to be the Lord's energy, then it's so easy to serve the Lord. That's really what Prahlad's getting at in this verse. It's so easy. There is no difficulty. Koti prayasa. Prahlad Maharaj is saying, and Prabhupada took this slogan as his own and really promoted it. Koti prayasa. What's the difficulty? You can just, in any situation, chant the names of the Lord. Remember his form, qualities, and pastimes. Hear about his form, qualities, and pastimes. I mean, it's so easy. Knowing that the Lord is the supersoul in the heart of all beings. One is easily in contact, just as easy as one can touch the sky. That's the analogy given here. You just, there, I'm touching the air. In fact, the air is around us. The air is so critical for our life. It's so crucial. It's so vitalizing. And yet we rarely think about it. As soon as the air is gone, game over. You better believe you're not going to be listening to me anymore. We're all going to be stressed if there were no air for our last 2 minutes of life. It's omnipresent. It's vital. It's critical. It's so easily obtainable. There you go. And yet we're so rarely even conscious of it. This is our relationship with the Lord in the form as the supersoul. Always there. That's why he's called Vasudeva. One is omnipresent, like the air, like the wind. Vasudeva. So it's so easy. It's so easy. And yet we find ourselves bewildered. That's why Prahlad Maharaj is baffled. Why then should people not engage in his devotional service by easily hearing and chanting? Even if you just meditate on doing devotional service, if you're just thinking about, like our dear Bhubir Prabhu and Julian Yatra and Sarvatma and Divya, they're sending all these pictures from Vrindavan and Mayapur. And even if you're just meditating on, wow, if I could be there, chanting with the devotees and doing parikram, even just thinking about it, you're engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. It's that easy. And so naturally, Prahlad is baffled. So why then are we addicted to unnecessarily producing artificial paraphernalia for sense gratification? Why then, indeed, the answer is because those very objects of sense gratification are the Lord's energy. We are meant to be attached to the Lord. That's why we're attached to the sense objects, the senses. That's why that implication is always there, that entanglement. What needs to be rectified is our upadi, the designation. Instead of thinking, I am the master of these senses and sense objects, no, I am the servant of the Lord and his energies. Then it's that easy. It's as easy as obtaining the sky, getting the air. It's that easy. The senses are meant to hear about the Lord's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. That's what the ears are for. The eyes are meant to see the beautiful form of the Lord, of Sri Sri Radha Damodar in the temple. The tongue is meant to taste the prasadam that has been offered to the Lord with devotion. The hands, the tactile sense, is meant to touch the body of the Lord when serving the deity form, especially. Or as other forms in the paraphernalia, like the mridanga, the kartals, the harmonium, whatever instrument, anything that were used in service to the Lord. That's what our sense of touch is meant for. The sense of smell is meant to smell the fragrance of the flowers that are offered to the Lord, the tulasi. That's what the senses are meant for. And we should have a certain anticipation and an excitement about engaging the senses in those objects, just like we have anticipation and excitement about our sense gratification. You all know what I'm talking about when we're thinking, well, as soon as this Bhagavatam class is done, I mean, I tuned in and I did my part. I've done my pious act for the day. I've done my requirement. But as soon as this is done, ooh, I've got some sense gratification lined up. I'm so excited for it. You know, it's sitting there. Perhaps it's in the fridge. Perhaps it's in another room. I want to ask everybody to list what's sense gratification they're meditating on, anticipating, salivating. His Holiness Devamrita Swami says in his Bhakti Bhava book, we need to apply that same anticipation to the spiritual sense objects. When I taste the Lord's prasadam that's been offered to Sri Sri Radha Damodar, oh, I just can't wait to hear the kirtan of all the devotees glorifying the Lord in the temple. Oh, when will I be able to place my hands on the form of the Lord in service to the deity, in service to the Lord's cows, and all of his paraphernalia? We should have that same anticipation, getting excited about it. I'm itching for it. I'm eager for it, lusty for those sense objects. Like I've been very fortunately engaged in some service to Gita Nagari soon, helping with the alternative spring break group that's coming. Parijata Mataji has asked Balaram Bala and myself and some others, I assume, to come and help with that group that'll be there. And I'm actually like really pumped. I very rarely get to do some direct service for Sri Sri Radha Damodar, for Gita Nagari. And so, you know, I'm like thinking about, I'll do like this, and we'll go here, and we'll do this service, we'll do that service. So His Holiness Devamrita Swami says we need to apply that same anticipation that we would have for sense gratification, but to the Lord's service. Get pumped up, get anxious about it, just like we get anxious for the sense gratification. It's very easy, Prahlad Maharaj is saying. It's so easy to do. Always engaged in hearing and chanting about the Lord's name, form, qualities, and pastimes rectifies this critical entanglement between the senses and the objects. Knowing ourselves to be the servant of the Lord changes everything so easily, so simply. And so that's what we should do. Instead of endeavoring with great effort to go to hell. There's a lot of effort involved in that. So it is not just us. This is my last point, dear devotees, then I'll wrap up my my little speech here. But it's not just us who are trying to get a bit of spiritual sense objects, who are trying to catch a glimpse of devotional service to the Lord. It's not just us. That longing and anticipation for being fully engaged in the Lord's service, for being fully absorbed in the spiritual sense object of Sri Sri Radha Damodar is shared even by the topmost devotees. So if we get a little feeling of that excitement and anticipation in devotional service, we should know that even the topmost devotees, namely the gopis in Vrindavan, are feeling that way. This is the perfection of our Krishna consciousness. If we can have that perpetual longing for the spiritual sense objects of seeing Radha and Krishna together, what to speak of serving them. So let me read a little something from from Venu Gita for the pleasure of the devotees. Let's meditate on how even the gopis are meditating on how to serve Radha and Krishna. Let's meditate on the gopis and how they're meditating on how to serve Radha and Krishna. Sometimes the gopi girls get together encouraging each other and how to serve Radha and Krishna. They justify each other's devotional sentiment. Of course, many of them being married, apparently married to others in Vrindavan. They can't openly speak about their attraction to Krishna, but they come together in secret meetings and they encourage each other. They justify each other's attachment and longing for Krishna. One experienced gopi speaks to a younger gopi, saying, "In truth, moon-faced Sri Krishna is not in the midst of his noisy friends as the cows enter the forest in the morning." She's helping this devotee, this gopi, to how to get a glimpse of Krishna, how to be engaged in Krishna's service. When Krishna is entering the forest in the morning with his cows and his friends, Krishna's not right there in the middle. She's giving a little hint. Being very clever, he stays a bit behind and freely focuses his attention on the gopis. At that time, while playing his flute, he searches out Sri Radha among an ocean of young girls and casts his gaze of love in her direction. Overcoming shyness and fear of her superiors, Radhika in turn offers a sidelong glance from the very corner of her lotus eyes. This is called the Radha Kripa Kataksha. I have a dear friend in Los Angeles named Radha Kripa Kataksha Prabhu. Aksha is the eyes, kata, from the side, from the very, very side and corner of the eyes. Radha Kripa, Shrimati Radharani mercifully looks upon Sri Krishna. That's her mercy, just very slightly from the side of her eyes. This gopi goes on saying, "I think the meeting of their eyes is like the union of the Ganga and the Yamuna, which removes all obstacles to some future encounter of wonder." Leaning towards her friends, she concludes, "Saki, if you see the lotus faces of Radha and Sri Krishna decorated with the king of flutes, if you see their exchange of glances in the late morning hours, if you see a particle of dust that comprises service to their meeting, oh, my friends, without a doubt, you have seen everything. Certainly nothing else remains to be seen, heard of, or known thereafter. O beautiful maidens of Braj, if you see such a marvel, your lives will have achieved perfection without doubt." In conclusion, dear devotees, we are in good company. We are in good company in that we are baffled by the persistent entanglement of the senses with their objects. Prahlad Maharaj is baffled by this. Uddhava is baffled by this. Brahma is baffled. The four Kumaras are baffled by this. Brahma is baffled by this. We are in company if we are struggling with this situation. And we are in good company if we are aspiring to engage the senses in the service of the master of the senses, Radha and Krishna. Even the gopis are longing for an opportunity to engage their senses in the service of the master of the senses, Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. So let us take heart and be encouraged. It is possible. In fact, someday, by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual masters, all the great devotees, and by the grace of the Lord himself, we'll realize that it's actually so easy as grabbing the air, as easy as touching the air, the sky, which constantly nourishes us, sustains us, and yet we rarely are conscious of. It's that easy. So that is our good fortune, that Srila Prabhupada has made it so easy. So, dear devotees, on this day of our Lord, February 25th, 2026, let's resolve ourselves to be engaged in devotional service of the Lord, hearing and chanting, remembering, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevanam. Let's make plans to have our senses engaged in the service of the Lord. What am I going to do with my mouth? What am I going to do with my eyes? What am I going to do with my hands? I'm going to hold my japa beads. I'm going to feel them. I'm going to smell the incense offered to the Lord, if you have deities at home, of course. Or seeing in the temple, Sri Sri Radha Damodar. What am I going to do with my tongue? What's the plan? And in this way, as Prahlad Maharaj is saying, we can very easily come in contact with the Lord. There's no difficulty. Ka ati prayasa. Hare Krishna, thank you for tuning in and listening to my spiel. This is more therapy for myself, of course, as you could probably tell, preaching to myself here, but there might be some little bit of relevance for all of you other great Vaishnavas. I'll stop there and ask if there's any comments or retorts or additions or subtractions or multiplications or divisions. If not, then I'll assume everybody is content, at least, content enough to not complain or to protest. And so, thank you for tuning in, for listening. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila
Hold on, I'm
Prabhupada
gonna,
Ki
geez,
Jai.
gotta give us a little time to formulate our question.
Oh, all right. Well, dear Tarika Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. That is always something we can talk about. I actually have a few questions. I'm trying to prioritize them. Um, I'll start with this. Since the Lord is present in our hearts as our friend and well-wisher, um, how can we become more conscious of that friendship in our daily life?
Become more conscious of the relationship between the Lord and the living entity as a friend. Like Prabhupada's referencing in the Vedas, it says Sayujao, Sakayao. Those two are friends. And we can be conscious of that relationship by acting as a friend. You do something for your friend. You don't just keep them in some passive state, like collecting baseball cards or something, whatever it is that people collect these days. Well, I've got them. They're there. It's mine. I think many people they treat the Lord like that. That's not Sakyara, so that's Dasya. I mean Shanta. The Lord is there and I'm here, and let's just leave it at that. But a friend, you do something for them. You talk about them. You're encouraged by them, and you encourage others to know them. So I think we can be conscious of a relationship with the Lord as a friend by acting like a friend. Confiding, you confide in a friend. We're meant to pray, vandanam, and to approach the Lord with our problems, like you do with a friend. So in this relationship, I think there must be some action. As Srila Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Devotion, bhakti is not just some idle sentiment, but it's what does he say? It's a cultivation of, I can't remember the exact words now. But there's action there. Of course, we can also hear about the Lord and his relationship with his friends, those who have that Sakyarasa, like Arjuna, like Uddhava, and of course the cowherd boys of Vrindavan. And this way we can remember the Lord is my friend also, the best friend, the one who's always present, just like two birds in a tree, always witnessing, watching as we're attached to the fruits in the tree, but waiting for us to turn our attention to him. I mean, that's a very good friend. I can't say any more than that without being sentimental. What do you think, Prabhu?
I've never been accused of that. Thinking.
Accused of, sorry, Prabhu, you've never been accused of what?
Thinking.
Oh. Hare Krishna. We love your self-effacing humor. It's very Vaishnava. Thank you for demonstrating to us. Not to take
And
you.
you were saying that um, you mentioned various great souls from Brahma to the Kumaras and so on. They're also baffled, but
Hmm.
their condition of being baffled is um, a little different than our bafflement. Um, they are in control of their senses. They understand what to do and what not to do. When we are baffled, we become victimized by our senses. Isn't it?
I mean, even though they are great devotees, Brahma and the Kumaras, they've also had their bad days. Brahma has been bewildered by his senses. There's a description of that in Srimad Bhagavatam, where he became even attracted to his own daughter by the power of the illusory energy of the Lord, of course. It's not some trivial, superficial sort of attachments like we have, but some. Kumaras also. We're reading in the ISKCON Africa uh, Srimad Bhagavatam Sangha. Of course, there's been the discussion of the four Kumaras going up to Vaikuntha and having a conflict with Jaya and Vijaya, becoming angry at them. So, I mean, that can happen too. It's just perhaps for these great devotees, it's few and far between. Devotees like Uddhava are in another category, being being eternal friends of the Lord, eternally. I mean, already situated in their Siddha Swarupa. Uddhava, Arjuna, as Krishna says, Arjuna, you and I are always in a relationship. The cowherd boys in Vrindavan, of course, they're in a different category indeed. But even they can, if the Lord so desires, be bewildered by their senses, be baffled, so that it might be instructive to others. So, I don't think that we should, although I hear what you're saying, we should have the utmost of respect for these great acharyas, many of whom are our gurus. But I think that we should not put ourselves in some entirely different category and therefore not benefit from the example that they're setting. I mean, the Lord is in our heart just as much as he's in the heart of Prahlad, the Kumaras, and Brahma. The Lord is also, he's in our heart too. And we have all the same potential to be very, very devoted. And I think that we shouldn't consider these great devotees as being in some entirely different category. We are meant to learn from their example and to benefit from it. Otherwise, what would be the use of hearing these pastimes of Srimad Bhagavatam if it weren't relevant for us also? So of course, recognize where you're coming from, Taraka Prabhu, that these are great devotees and they're very special and they're far above us. But they too can be baffled by the senses. The Lord's illusory energy can bewilder even Brahma and Shiva. Even Balaram can be bewildered by the Lord's energy, as we hear in Srimad Bhagavatam. So to speak of us, anybody, anyone can be mystified by the Lord.
I
That's
think
my
you're right.
understanding. I hope you'll
There's another.
forgive me for slightly disagreeing with you, Taraka Prabhu.
No, no, I agree with you. I think you're right. I'm just making conversation. Another quick question. Um, why is it that Prahlad Maharaj is saying here that going to hell requires effort,
Yeah.
but
Tell me about it.
somehow or other, when I hear this, I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, going to hell is the easiest thing in the world. Why does it seem so easy to me? Why does engagement in devotional service sometimes seem so difficult, and falling into Maya, directing oneself towards hell, feels as easy as falling in a ditch?
I think it's just our habits. We have normalized, we've habituated and normalized the hellish activities, which are now just so common in society, and we just take it as granted. Yeah, of course, billions of animals are slaughtered. And because there's some laws in America about how much meat can be processed, cattle are shipped up to Canada, they're slaughtered in Canada, and then they're shipped over to China to be, processed, chopped up, packaged, shipped back here, and then shipped around the country to be put in plastic bags and sold in stores. We just normalized it. It's actually so much effort. The excess, the wastefulness is just boggling. but we've just normalized, it becomes so habitual that because we were born into it, we take it as normal. There's actually so much effort involved to do anything besides sitting down and chanting Hare Krishna. Just there's so much effort involved. But because it's a habit, because we see everybody else doing it, we take it as granted. Like, oh yeah, that's just what you're supposed to do. Get in the rat race, buy a bunch of stuff made by slaves, and whoever dies with the most stuff wins. I saw this bumper sticker. Whoever dies with the most stuff wins. It's being sarcastic, of course, but there's a lot of truth there. And so this habit energy and social comparison are some of the two of the strongest energies, which makes this very easy and very normal for us to go to hell. Again, referencing His Holiness Devaramita Swami, he said these two energies, habits of consumption and social comparison. And we think, well, then of course I should get as much of this material energy as I can, even at the cost of the well-being of others. It's just natural. It's so easy. Everybody else is doing it. No, it's not really. It only seems easy and only seems natural because everybody else is doing it. So it is a pernicious situation where we think that even hellish, very sinful activities are just easy and normal. And, this is a symptom of our malaise, individually and collectively. We just take it as very normal. And that's why we need to hear Srimad Bhagavatam and recognize, no, it is not normal. Just because everybody's doing it in the Kali Yuga in 2026 does not mean that it's normal. And just because the excess effort, the labor has been outsourced, we don't see it so much in Center County or Juniata County, Pennsylvania. Doesn't mean that the suffering is not there. It's been outsourced. When we buy some cheap electronic thing, there's a reason that it's cheap because the pain and the suffering has been outsourced to somebody else. So we should be conscious of this. There's a lot of effort to go to hell. And I think Prabhupada's purport is correct. There's a lot of effort to go to hell. If we're not doing that effort, somebody else is doing it. But we're all going to share that karma. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Better to live a simple life, chanting Hare Krishna, having a little prasadam, singing and dancing with the devotees. Let's try to come closer and closer to that, as Srila Prabhupada made explicitly clear. Jai.
But everybody's doing it, doing it, doing it.
That's right.
Chewing those
Everybody's
green
doing it. And then you
chewing
think, oh, I got to do it too. And then you visit your family, probably most of us have some family that are non-devotees. And then you have to feel that social pressure. What are you doing? What have you bought? What are you buying? What sort of money are you spending? That's how you have to show yourself as being accomplished. This upadi, identify with the sense objects. What do you purchase? What do you drive? How many square feet is your residence? What are you wearing? Right? So in this way, we think it's very easy to be coerced by these social pressures, but actually there is great effort, there is great endeavor, there is so much work, there is so much waste, there is so much destruction. Just at least in our American society, we've learned to outsource it so that we don't have to be so directly conscious of it. But Prabhupada is absolutely right. There's a lot of effort to go to hell, and it's very easy to contact the Lord as the super soul in the heart. It's as easy as touching the air. So let's contemplate this today. Let's take the easy route and go back home, back to Godhead. If that's all right with you, Tarika Prabhu.
You're out of time?
I am out of time. I've got some other things I got to go, unfortunately.
I have more.
All right, one more for the
All
ecstasy
right.
of Krishna
If
consciousness.
bhakti is easy, why is it so rare?
Why is it so rare? Because it's not something that's created by the material energy. There's no qualification that's material, whether you're intelligent or wealthy or beautiful. Nobody's qualified for it. It is simply the Lord's mercy distributed by his devotees. That's why it's rare. The only reason it's rare is that we're not out doing Sankirtan enough. So it is easy, and it's rare because it's a gift from the Lord. It's the mercy. It's not generated by some material condition. It's not some calculation. It's not some logical thing. It's not some manipulation of the material energy like everything else that we're used to. It is simply the Lord's mercy coming through his devotees, planted as a seed in the heart of someone that they've simply favored. It's that simple. And that's rare. It's just because we're not doing enough Sankirtan. That's the only reason it's rare. Hare Krishna. Is that a sufficient answer, Tarika Prabhu? I know you, of course, have so much more you could say about it if you like.
Thank you, Prabhu. And thank you for a very nice class. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for keeping us engaged in devotional service. Thank you, dear devotees, for tuning in. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo.